This evening's broadcast is brought to you by Home Guys Home Services. Hello, and thank you for joining this broadcast of Port Angeles News. I'm your host, Arthur Wojnowski. Later in our broadcast, we will be showing our next interview in our Meet Your New City Council segment. I sat down with Port Angeles City Council member and current mayor, Sissy Bruch. Stay tuned to hear what she had to tell us. We begin our broadcast with information of a near miss between the United States Coast Guard air crew and a remotely flown drone.
So if you can state your name and your title.
Yep, my name's Lieutenant Commander Brent Schmadeke. I'm the Operations Officer here at the Coast Guard Air Station in Port Angeles.
Thank you. And can you tell me a little bit about the near miss you had yesterday?
So on Saturday, we were doing a routine training mission up in the vicinity of William R. Fairchild International Airport up there in Port Angeles. Our crews came across what they thought was a bird, and it turned out to be a quad drone. So the crew took evasive action to avoid what they thought was a bird, but it actually turned out being a drone that was being flown over the top of the Elwha River. The drone came within 50 feet, is what the crew estimated the distance between the helicopter and the drone as being. And so we just want to put the word out there to the public that, hey, there's some rules and stipulations that you need to follow per the FAA. If you're going to be operating a drone, which this one was below the 55-pound threshold for a hobby use, so if it's a model aircraft or a drone, you need to get the airport manager's permission to fly within a 5-mile nautical range around an airport, and you have to be below 400 feet as the altitude threshold. So once you get that permission, then you're good to go. We really encourage staying well clear of airports because there's low-lying aircraft coming into the land, and we just want to avoid any type of collision between a drone and a helicopter or other general aviation aircraft.
And could you tell me how bad would it be if a drone were to strike a piece of equipment such as this, and what are the potential costs of damage or replacement if something like that were to happen?
Sure. So the drones can be, there's two types of drones. You can have drones that are above 55 pounds, which have to be registered with the FAA, and you have to have a license to fly a big drone. So you're talking like military grade drones. The one that we encountered was kind of a hobby drone per se. So, and those are below 55 pounds. But even if you're talking 30, 45 pounds, hitting a general aviation aircraft or even a helicopter doing, say, 90 to 100 knots, that could potentially do some damage to an airplane or an aircraft. It kind of depends on where it strikes the aircraft. For us, with a lot of moving blades, it could easily deform a blade, affecting the airflow and the lift on it. So our helicopters are about the $15 million range, so obviously it wouldn't cause that much damage unless it went down. But it can be expensive. There's 4 air crewmen flying in that aircraft, so if you have a loss of life, that's obviously irreplaceable. But it can cause some significant damage. If it's a general aviation aircraft, maybe it damages the wing, and aviation repairs are not cheap. So it probably varies depending on where you would strike the drone with your aircraft.
I spoke with a representative from William Fairchild International Airport off camera about the incident. Currently, the individual did not wish to make a public comment, but did state that the person flying the drone was flying outside the 5-mile radius of an airport and was also flying below the 400-foot altitude limit set by the FAA. So while this incident was a surprising incident, the operators of the drone were flying in compliance of current rules set forth by the FAA. We will follow up this story in the near future with a segment to clarify current rules, how to register, and things to look out for before you fly. As a courtesy to those that are manning aircraft in our skies, please notify the airport around you, even if you are outside the 5-mile radius, so that the pilots planning to leave the airspace can be extra alert for safety. Please fly your drones safely, and remember that manned aircraft has the right of way. Speaking of misses, we move on to our next story. Leitz Farm and Feed will be closing their doors at their current location in Port Angeles and moving closer to Sequim. Unable to negotiate a fair purchase price for their current location, they were faced with rising rent and moved out of Port Angeles due to limited options for retail operations of their size. I spoke briefly with Vito, and this is what he had to say.
My name is Vito Sabini, and I'm our general manager down here.
And so can you tell me a little bit as to why you decided to move out of PA?
It really wasn't our decision to move out of PA. What ended up happening is we ended up getting pushed out of this current property. And the reason we got pushed out of this current property, we've been trying for 2 years to purchase this property. And the owners of the property could not get real on a price, and they were way over what the county appraises the property at. There's a lot of issues, oil contamination, there's asphalt issues, there's roof issues, and so it just wasn't suitable. We couldn't agree on that price, and when we couldn't agree on that price, it came down to the point that they wanted to increase our rent 110%. And there's no way, and we see it all the time happen in the city of Port Angeles with a lot of businesses in this town. You see that happen with small businesses. They come in, they think you're making a lot of money, and then they want to increase your rent at that point when you can't do that. And so at that point, we had to make a decision of where we could go. We looked at a variety of properties. We tried staying in Port Angeles because we wanted to serve Port Angeles. We've been in Port Angeles 9 years. We love the community. We love to support the community. So that was a big goal for us, and we weren't able on any property here in town was not large enough for us to do. Everybody says, oh, well, you got the old Hartnagel's building down the road. It's not big enough. We need more room. We have all the tractors. We're getting into more equipment. We're adding new lines. We're looking into ways to better suit the community. And so by doing so, there was just not a property big enough. And so we kept going further and further. We looked at property towards O'Brien Road on commercial, for commercial property. There was wetlands there, so there was nothing in that area that we could find that would work for us. So Lumberman's was where we ended up settling. Logistically speaking, I think overall, Lumberman's will be a good location for us. We definitely wanted to stay in Port Angeles, but now we can serve Sequim a little bit better, and we're in that midway point between Sequim and Port Angeles. So we've had a long time of quality customer service. We're 3 years running for the #1 feed store in Port Angeles and Clallam County. So I feel like our customers that know us will still follow our customer service. We still want to be able to serve everybody. We offer delivery for any product that we have. We deliver hay all over the peninsula. So we still want to serve Port Angeles. It was just kind of the last option we had. Being able to get into that property and then in future owning that property, though, we will be able to better serve the community as a company.
And can you tell us where you're moving to?
So we are moving. Our new address will be 259110 East Highway 101 in Sequim. We will be in the old Lumberman's location across from Drake Road and Olympic Restaurant Supply.
And can you tell me a little bit about the property? Did you have to do any kind of renovations in preparation for the move?
So the property's been vacant for 11 years, so nobody's been on there. So there was a lot of moss removal on the asphalt. We're getting it repainted, so that way we'll have parking lines, we'll have arrows directing traffic where to go. As far as renovations on the inside, we've come in, we've put new lights in, for our shelving, so that way all of our shelving can be lit up. And over the next few months, you will see further improvements. We were kind of on a timeline. When we came back, we only had about a month and a half to make decisions. So we're moving enough in, we're renovating enough to get the store up and running, serve for what we have now, and then we'll be growing. We'll be adding 1,500 square foot of retail space, so we'll be growing into more, being able to bring in something I'm waiting on for the move that we would have brought here. We're bringing in 2 cycles. So I'll carry Red Max brand for chainsaws, string trimmers, leaf blowers, so on and so forth, and that type of stuff. So we will be expanding the business in that location. So it's just waiting for us to grow. They're waiting for renovations to be done. Obviously, everybody knows everybody's building in this community, so it's hard to get contractors on the ball. But we lucked out. We found a good couple of contractors, a good electrician to get us in there.
And have you had any feedback from any of your current clients from around the community in regards to your move?
Most of our clients have been very happy. We've had everybody with good comments, positive comments. A lot of the feedback we've got is a lot of the Port Angeles community still travels to Sequim. You know, you're missing Costco in Sequim, you're in Port Angeles, you're missing those businesses. So a lot of people still go. Will we be as convenient for the community? No, it'll not be that nice swing in, pick something up on your way home. But for a lot of our customers, they're still going out that way at least once a week, so they're able to still swing into our location. We have wide access on both ways, you know, so whether you're coming west or you're going east, you can swing right in real fast and stop in and see us.
All right, Vito, thank you so much for your time. We will surely miss the convenience of having them right here in town, but at least we are not losing them for good. And now let's take a look at our weather for the week. Friday, mostly cloudy with 60% chance of occasional rain. Temperatures in the low 40s and overnight in the mid 60s. Saturday, mostly cloudy with a 10% chance of precipitation. Temperatures in the mid 40s, overnight in the low 30s. Sunday, partly cloudy with temperatures in the high 40s and 15% chance of rain. Overnight temperatures in the high 30s. Monday, partly cloudy. Daytime temperatures in the high 40s, overnight in the high 30s. Tuesday, mostly cloudy. Daytime temperatures in the low 50s and overnight temperatures in the low 40s. Wednesday, cloudy with daytime temperatures in the low 50s and overnight temperatures in the low 40s. Thursday, mostly cloudy with daytime temperatures in the mid 50s and overnight temperatures in the low 40s. And now some news from this week's Port Angeles City Council meeting. Mayor Bruch made a proclamation for Steve Drake, a Port Angeles City employee recognized for his 30-plus years of serving the community. We thank Steve Drake for his long commitment to serving our community and wish him the best in his future endeavors. After hearing the public comment on the plastic bag ban, City Council member Lindsay Schroman Warren introduced a third option for adoption, modeled after the Tacoma ordinance. There was a brief discussion and the matter was tabled to the next City Council meeting so that the public could have a chance to read the new ordinance and have a public comment period. Port Angeles City Council also approved a long-term lease for 10 years to Peninsula Area Public Access, as well as a $35,000 grant to assist in repairs of the building. City Council also approved the purchase of wood poles for the city in the amount of $39,579.27. Mayor Bruch inquired the city staff to see if the city could partner up with the Clown County PUD to try and save money in the future. City Council passed a resolution in support of Bike Everywhere Month. There will be events planned throughout the month. Noting the health and benefits and cost savings for not having to consume fuel, the resolution will also increase the city's bronze level to silver. The council will form a think tank that will meet monthly, open to the public to brainstorm issues in our community. The first meeting will be held at 5:30 p.m. on the second Tuesday after the UIC meeting. City Council approved a new temporary lease of the Atlas trucking facility for 2 years while they build their new facility. There will be costs associated with the move to secure the property, create covered areas for equipment, and moving IT equipment. There was money budgeted for the move with the estimated price tag of the move over $200,000. If you are interested in watching the full City Council meeting, you can watch the meeting at our Port Angeles News YouTube page by searching Port Angeles News in the search bar. While you are there, please like and subscribe to the channel to receive other content not aired in this program. And now we present our interview with Mayor Sissy Bruch.
I work 32 hours with the Lower Elwha Clallam tribe. So my typical Monday through Thursday routine is I get up, I have breakfast, because without breakfast I get grouchy, and then I go to work. I work until 4:30, 5, depending on what's happening. Then I get home. So let's see, Monday nights I play pickleball, and then try to get to email. That's a forever constant. Tuesday nights is either City Council or some other meeting. Wednesday night is also pickleball if it's happening. And then Thursday night is usually kind of almost like a down evening. It's just been a long week at that point. Fridays, today started at way too early. I'm not a morning person. I had to be at Rotary at 7, and so had a meeting there with them, and then the day usually progresses from one meeting to another. most Fridays. Now that from council, I used to have at least maybe half a day. Now with the mayor position, it's my whole Friday is taken up on meetings and dealing with city stuff. You know, I've never been in politics before, ever, and so it has changed quite a bit. I used to work 5 days a week. I could not do 5 days a week. I was exhausted. It's actually exhausting. If I was going to do a good job for the city, I needed to be prepared, read my packet. I usually would end up reading the packet twice because, you know, the first time you kind of just go through it and like, okay, here's the issues. Second time, it's amazing how many things you pick up that you missed the first time. And it's like, I don't know enough about this, and, you know, let me find out about that. So it was doing that research. So yes, it's just life has gotten a lot busier since being on council. I was never interested in politics, truthfully. It's just not something I did. So my dad and my sister would talk about politics ad infinitum during dinners, and I would just be sitting there bored. It's like, are you guys done yet? You know, so it was not something I was interested at all in. So I had one professor who said, it's not if you're going to serve, it's when you're going to serve. And I don't know why that rang true, but it did. So I became a professor at a point, and so I remember telling my students that. And I remember in one of the meetings with some of the landscape architects, they said, well, do you want to put your money where your mouth is? And I thought, okay, what do you want, you know, what do you mean? He goes, there's an opening at the Planning Commission in the Lansing Planning Board. This was in Lansing, Michigan. I said, sure. You know, I signed up, they accepted me, and it was the very first meeting I went to, and we had, I didn't know what they were going to do, so I was just going to quietly listen and learn. And so at the very end, they were discussing a case about a river. It was this property that was right at the edge of the river, and they needed to put, it was talking about walks and benches and things like that. And I remember asking the question, well, aren't we turning our backs to the river? Because everything was facing the street. And the committee stopped, and they said, you're right. And they flipped everything around so that now the public had access. And I remember coming home thinking, wow, one little question has made a difference in this river. I was hooked. In some ways, I was hooked with public service. And so, anyway, I got my arm twisted into being into politics. I was born in Guatemala, so I'm an immigrant. My parents are from Bolivia. So my dad worked with the Pan American Health Organization. That's part of the World Health. And so we moved from Bolivia to Guatemala, then to Mexico. So he went from being from the local office in Bolivia to the more regional office in Guatemala and then Mexico. Anyway, so the States was the Americas. And so we moved to Bethesda, Maryland. And that's where I grew up, in Bethesda, Maryland. And from there on, I school, and then I ended up back in Maryland. So I practiced for 10 years. So then 10 years of professional landscape architectural practice. I found myself teaching, and then that's how I ended up in Lansing, becoming a professor at Michigan State. And then, so I seemed to be good for about 10 years. So I did 10 years of, you know, private practice. I did 10 years of academia, and I was ready for an adventure. You know, life changes happened halfway when I was in Michigan, and I was, my kids were, you know, all done. I had started visiting. I have friends here, and so I started visiting. But I must admit, I looked at our high schools. My kids were in high school, and the high schools are just, at that point, were not very good. And they were at top-notch high schools in Lansing. So I was not about to pull them. So I waited until they were done with high school and then came over. And I thought, okay, here comes the adventure. I gave up a faculty position, and I thought, what am I going to do? So I came on a Sunday. I remember looking at the webpage, looked for jobs, found one. The Elwha were looking for someone who do medicinal garden. I took that grant. I called them up on Monday. I had an interview on Tuesday, and I got the job on Wednesday. And I thought, okay, so far so good. You know, I think it's the right decision. So anyway, you never know with adventure. It was interesting. So I did get my arm twisted, but people said, okay, we promise to support you. And I did have pretty decent support. I must admit that was pretty good. So, and I'm like, okay, I am fairly new here. I arrived in 2009, and here I'm running in 2011, or I guess it was, I don't know, 11 I think it is. Anyway, so I'm like, I don't know who to run against. I don't really know, I know nothing. So people said, well, run against Don Perry. So it was a really close race. I think I won it. I don't know if it was, I've forgotten whether it's 120 some votes, or it was a very narrow margin, and which surprised me. So that was my very ever first campaign. So I'm a lot shyer, and I don't like being bothered at home either by all these knocking on doors and things. And so I did knock on some doors, or usually when I walked out there, people were out there. So I would engage them, say, here, don't forget to vote. I think that was as far as I went, not to even introduce like I said, I am not your typical, I don't feel like a typical politician. So I would just hand my literature to folks and say, please don't forget to vote. And most of the time I would just leave it in the doorstep, forget about the even knocking. Like I said, I'm just not that great at that. And but I found it very hard. I'm used to having my credentials speak for me. I'm not used to speaking for myself. It was, people in general are really nice. I did have one guy who said, thank you, but I'm not voting for you. And I'm like, okay, what are you gonna say, right? But I was surprised people had really set ideas of things to get fixed in the city. So if you get in there, you gotta fix this and this and this. And I was very surprised about how engaged they were. So I come from bigger towns. I was never that engaged in politics. It was just not something that I even focused on. And to know how engaged this community is about its governance, I was really impressed. What impacts me? Who impacts me right now is the students. I have been so impressed with the student movement, because I feel like as adults we failed in moving some of, especially the gun issue. And the students are getting up and doing it in a way that actually, it matters. They're putting the time. I wish I had been that involved when I was their age. I went to Stevens, and I had this little girl come to me, and she said, would you sign my petition? And she was in 8th grade. I believe it's 8th grade. And I said, sure, what's your petition about? And she said, well, I want to get rid of styrofoam. And I'm like, absolutely. So I've got a little bit under 2 years left, and I will have put in 8 years in the city council. And then I'm done. I think it's time for someone else to step up. I've learned a lot, and I think I've tried to be good to Port Angeles in the way I know how to, of questioning things. One of the big things that I know we're trying to make sure that the life costs of things that we buy and that we make and that we build are included in our plans. I know when I first got on there, the first thing I asked is like, well, so what's our vision? Where are we going? And that was kind of like, well, we're not, sure. So one of the things I have found is that one, government does move slowly, and there's reasons for it. I know Dan McKean addressed everybody and told folks as to the Maslow pyramid and how we were taking care of the basics, getting the financial policies in place. I've been looking to the comprehensive plan for a long time now. I've had, Dan and Nathan, you just start looking at the issues of designing our city to make it more walkable, to make it more sustainable. And so I'm hoping that by the time I'm done, we will have a comprehensive plan that is actually usable. What keeps me up at night? I know sometimes these things are a little irrational, but I don't know I think it was 4 years ago, they found a big hole right by the Red Lion, I think on the driveway coming down. And it was a room, the space was like the size of a room. It was just an empty hole. And I gotta tell you, that kept me up at night. I'm thinking, if this one hole exists that we can see, how many holes are there? Because things got sluiced when they created the downtown. And so that, and there's the creek that goes through there. I'm thinking, how much water is leaking that we've now worn away enough soil that it's, there's a big hole there. So that one absolutely kept me up at night. So things that potentially we have no control over. I mean, we don't necessarily know what's down there. So I guess the unknown. You got great questions. So how did you get ready for this interview?
Honestly, I'm just like you. I've never been interested in politics before, and this has never been a forethought as well in my mind.
Yeah.
But I've always enjoyed experiences.
Yeah.
So for me, everything's an experience.
So I am Sissy Bruch. I am the mayor of the city of Port Angeles, newly elected to this position, and I am hoping that these next 2 years bring forth a lot of good ideas. I hope that we can get more community involvement. I hope that we can put together a vision of where the city is moving forward. The city has had a lot of challenges. I think we have met most of those challenges quite well. We are financially in a good, stable position. We've got an amazing new council. We've got a staff that is doing a tremendous job for us. And so, like I said, for me, for this position and from the council, I would like to make sure that the vision from the community gets spoken and gets directed in such a way that it'll happen. So that is my hope for Port Angeles. I will be leaving at the end of that 2 years from being mayor. And so I would like to ensure that it is clear when people say, well, where's Port Angeles going? Because I think that's a question we get a lot. I would like that to be clear for everybody to know the plan, the comprehensive plan to be available to everybody who wants to see it. And just tell everybody that, gosh, we live in the most amazing place and grateful to live here. So I think that's what I'd like folks to know. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us to make this city great. And we could not live in a more beautiful place.
To watch the interview in its entirety, which ran about an hour long, go to our YouTube channel by searching Port Angeles News in the search bar and find the interview under the Videos tab. We would like to thank Peninsula Area Public Access for the use of their studio to film our interview. If you would like more information about joining Peninsula Area Public Access, you can visit their website at www.papaonline.tv. This concludes our broadcast. We thank you for watching, and until next time.